This is Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related, and today we have some more news to cover. From Google Nest Wi-Fi being optimized for Stadia to Hideo Kojima's recent comments on cloud gaming. But before we get into all that, we need to discuss IGN's new Stadia video, as it seems that they'll be starting to cover Stadia quite a bit this month. Now, in case you don't know, IGN actually hosts a series called IGN First, where they focus on a specific game or subject for a whole month. And it seems like the month of November is gonna be all dedicated to Google Stadia, so I'm guessing we're gonna be seeing a lot more info coming soon. Anyways, in this video, they sat down with Maj Bakar and talked about how latency works and how Google Stadia will handle it. Now, once again, this is a very tech-oriented video, but I highly recommend you give it a watch. The link will be in the description below, but for now, let's go over some of the things they talked about. In this video, Maj talks about actually running games at a higher frame rate than just 60 FPS, in most cases doubling it to 120. Now, to make it very clear, that doesn't mean you're experiencing 120 frames per second, but it should help against the latency when you're playing at 60 frames per second. This is actually something that was quickly discussed in Maj Bakar and John Justice's interview with Tested, but it's nice hearing even more information about it here. Basically, when you run it at 120 frames per second, it allows 2 frames to adjust the 60 FPS experience to make sure it's a smooth and a low latency one. Another technique that's being used is all the heavy investment that Google's made into the codec being used for Stadia. So much so that they've been investing into this codec for over 8 years, but it's got them down to encoding frames in sub-milliseconds. Maj himself refers to this as Google's secret sauce to make sure that they can transfer everything over in real time. They also go on to talk about Google's network technology and how it's being incorporated into Stadia, but one of the things I found most interesting is how Google's setting up profiles for certain game types so they can deliver the best experience possible. He mentions how strategy and RTS games may benefit from higher visual fidelity while a shooter needs to have that 60 FPS experience. He mentions how machine learning will be used to tell what type of game you're playing and then adjust itself for the best possible experience. Now, in this video, they go on to talking about a few more things, but as I said, if you really want to learn every little detail, I would highly recommend you checking out the video yourself. But before moving on to the next thing, there is one thing that I want to highlight that was said in this video, and that's his expectations for latency at launch. He made sure to talk about launch and did say that you may notice some latency at least at the beginning, but that their goal is to make sure there's parity between streaming and local hardware in the future. He does mention that there's things in the background that are going to help achieve that, but not everything is ready to go live directly at launch. Overall, I think it's a great message that they're sending across with this video. Frankly speaking, people do need to get their expectations in check. Stadia isn't going to be a perfect solution for everyone. Some people will notice some latency issues, but it is also important to state what Google plans on doing to solve that. Either way, it's left me excited to see what the rest of IGN's coverage ends up showing us and teaching us about Stadia. Next up, we'll be talking about Google Nest Wi-Fi and its capability to improve your Stadia experience when gaming. So in case you don't know, Nest Wi-Fi is a router made by Google, and it seems to have a Stadia-specific option that you can enable. According to 9to5 Google, that option is called Gaming Preferred, and it states the following. Gaming Preferred prioritizes Stadia so your gameplay doesn't get slowed down by other devices or activities on your network, like someone streaming TV or browsing the web in the other room. Gaming Preferred will work when you're playing games on Stadia. Now, obviously, this seems more targeted toward those who are going to be playing over a Wi-Fi connection. If you can play on wired, I highly recommend you play that way. With that said, I do find it very interesting, and honestly, I may even consider picking up a Nest Wi-Fi myself. I do wonder just how much more beneficial it is to be playing on Stadia with that enabled than compared to a normal router that doesn't have that feature. Either way, this is another big way that Google's gonna try and draw you into their ecosystem, especially if you're gonna be using Stadia as your main way of playing games. Do let me know in the comments section below whether or not you plan on picking up a Nest Wi-Fi router. Myself, I'm still debating it. Anyways, that'll move us on to the last bit of news, and that's a recent statement made by Hideo Kojima himself. Now, in case you don't know who that is, well, he was in charge of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and more recently, he was the one behind Death Stranding. This following statement comes from a recent interview with BBC Newsbeat. I think within the next few years, gaming will move on to streaming. Movies, dramas, and games will all be streamed, and you'll enjoy them on your iPad or iPhone or a screen anytime, anywhere. When that happens, games, films, and dramas will have to compete in the same space. I'm very interested in the new format of games that will appear on there, and that's what I want to take on. Now I gotta admit, this is extremely exciting to hear, especially coming from Kojima himself. He's definitely the type of person who could really benefit from developing a game on the cloud. He's super ambitious, extremely talented, and it would be a huge name to have on board. Now, to be very clear, this doesn't promise us anything. In fact, he also states that he wants to make a film with his studio. But it does instill hope that he is aware of what Stadia can do, especially since we know he took a photo with Jade Raymond. Now, once again, that doesn't mean anything's guaranteed or anything's even confirmed, but it does instill some sort of confidence that he's aware of Stadia in one way or another. Either way, I'm just happy to see his support for the cloud future. Not only that, but I do hope that one day we see a game developed from the ground up with the cloud in mind with his name attached. Anyways, that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it at all or found it helpful, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. And for today's end of video message, I want to leave you off with a question. Do you think another Stadia Connect is in the works before launch, or do you think it's a little too late to do that sort of thing? To be very clear, it was hinted at that we should be getting one more before launch, but that time frame is starting to get shorter and shorter. Seriously, we're only 2 weeks away from Stadia officially launching to the public. I also want to ask a follow-up question to that. If they do make a Stadia Connect, what would you expect out of it? In my opinion, I see one more Stadia Connect happening before launch, but at this point it would probably be the week before. And it would simply be to hype up the product. I'm not actually sure just how many new announcements we could expect. That being said, some things that they could talk about is game pricing, as well as announcing Red Dead Redemption 2 running at 4K 60 FPS officially. I look forward to reading your replies. Thanks for watching. Anyways, this has been Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. The Gen S community is over 2,000 strong and growing by the day, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.